it's very important. And that's how we live as a human with emotions. And one of the format that I've personally found that, what is intimacy should be spoken about. So Lorna, as we mentioned last time, she's a coach and she likes to do a lot of uncovering from human journey that we all have. But we will dive deep into this topic today that we are bringing as an emotional well-being. Intimacy is one of the main thing that we carry with us right from the day we are born. But what is really intimacy is all about and how we affects us and how also it's connected with our spirit, with our sexual activity, with our sexual life, but also as a sex, why do we define male and female? So this is like it's already there. So people have defined it, but are we accepting enough to understand the intimacy for men, intimacy for women, and intimacy for ourselves as our individual, so whether we are men or women? So let's dive into this. Welcome, Lorna, for this beautiful episode. As always, a topic
Hi,
which is very out of the box.
That's really awesome. It's great to be here with you again, Shailesh, and looking forward to, as we said before the recording started, I'm looking forward
Hmm.
to our conversation and let's see what comes up.
Yep. This is like we are just doing a trial and error kind of thing, but no, actually, it is important because we do talk about lots of emotions. So let's dive into this intimacy. So, according to you, Lorna, what does intimacy means to you to start with? Yes, so whoever has formed this word intimacy, let's start from there. How intimate it is.
Yeah, what a great starting place. I'm actually going to come at it a little bit different way and
Mm,
look at or speak to the point of what we often think of or what comes to our awareness when we think of intimacy. When we think about an intimate partner,
mm,
we think of intimacy right away. We think about a man, a woman, or sometimes it's a woman, woman, man, man, or forget the gender
mm,
piece. But there's this aspect of it's
mm.
usually to do with another person,
Another person.
and so sometimes that we're being intimate together. Okay, well, what does that mean?
Mm,
And oftentimes it's this piece where sometimes people can be naked physically
mm,
and they're not naked emotionally or not naked um, mentally, psychologically, if you will.
mm.
And so I think that to speak to intimacy, what it is sometimes to bring to awareness that what is conjured up in that first
Mm-hmm.
thought of when we hear that word. Um, I don't, I certainly won't take credit for this part, but it's for some time I've heard the definition of intimacy is in to me see.
Oh, okay.
So, which is a beautiful way to look at it. And so
Mm,
it's almost this invitation,
mm,
not only for someone else to see, like to see into me, to see who I am, to
mm,
know who I am. And that fits, I would say, into this model as well, is that's primarily how we get to be seen is
mm,
and accepted
mm.
and validated to know that we're okay for who we are. If someone else can see us and know that we're okay, they can see us and we're acceptable. And I always like to look at it as that is almost secondary, even though we've thought it's primary. But
Mm-hmm.
our first part is, can I see into me see?
Right. Into me, see. So adding to that further, uh, whatever the definition is, I wanted to touch on this very, as I said, like when we say intimate or intimacy, some
Mhm.
people, some humans, the moment you say this word, they want to not talk about it or not to know about it or don't even want to have a conversation about it
Mhm.
because they think that word is too intimidating for them. That he said it's not something out of the world that I am speaking or somebody is speaking or somebody is trying to pretend that you are talking this intimate, then you want to be intimate with me. All these things that we have
Mhm.
taste like in the current world, even though we are living in the 21st century, whatever we say, or we don't care about, those days are gone. We can approach men, women easily. There is no issue about, we can communicate, but still we have this word intimacy that is still
Mm.
going back to those good old years. And we
Yeah.
think, no, I don't want to know about if you're talking about intimacy. Or
Mm-hmm.
whenever you make any conversation with anyone, even general conversation, and the word intimate comes, and then they feel threatened, they feel scared, they feel whatever it is, and they feel that this person, I cannot talk with that person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do you see this in today's world, that intimacy, the word itself, is powerful? So if the word is so powerful that people who don't want to talk about it or reject it, then the act or the activity of intimacy, which is the another layer.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you see this, people rejecting or people not liking or people don't want to talk about it in today's world? How do you see this, as what's your view on that? Is it
Mm-hmm.
good enough for us to explore and express? Then the expression becomes less, and then it's a suppression. We continue to suppression, and that's where we will talk about it, how intimacy people get suppressed or get themselves suppressed, and then they struggle in the emotional well-being and the relationships. That will
Mm-hmm.
touch later, but let's dwell first. How do you see people not liking the word itself?
Intimacy, as I see it, really speaks to this aspect of trust. It
Mm,
speaks to an aspect of openness, vulnerability.
right.
As you've alluded to as well, there's this part that when we think about intimacy, right away we think of
Mm,
genitals. Somehow
correct.
genitals are involved right away,
Correct. Correct.
whatever the activity is. And that's where I say is that's right where we go right
Mm,
away. And sometimes um, because we have, I would say all of us in some way or another, and in varying degrees, have experienced some type of
mm,
shutdown, trauma, disconnection from our sexuality. and and that can start at a very very young age, and
mm,
often generationally, it'll be if someone is uncomfortable with their sexuality, or it's viewed from a lens of it's wrong, bad, dirty, shameful, unless it fits into a certain
mm,
container, a certain way of being,
mm,
that somehow it becomes shameful, and then it
mm,
starts to filter into not just about genitals but about our whole being.
mm,
Why? Because we come from sex, we come from sexuality. And
mm,
so if we're saying that sexuality is wrong or bad or dirty, then it's kind of, well, if that's what I came from, then there's something wrong with me.
mm.
And so right from a very early age,
Yeah.
that has the potential to continue to get layered on, layered on, layered on, to the
True.
point where the disconnection, the shame, the taboo um, becomes very much a barrier, if you will, to really opening up and being intimate, allowing someone else to see who I am beyond what my body looks like, but to see into the heart and soul of who we are.
Mm. Right. It's very interesting what you said. So it's always, but this is a challenge that we all face, and it affects our mindsets, affects our thinking, thought process, and also emotionals. Because do you think intimacy, the word itself, is quite emotional?
I would say so. It definitely has that
Mm,
a certain connotation to it. There are certain associations with it,
mm,
and so if we use this idea, let's come from this a basic, you know, in some ways, some people would say archaic or outdated. This idea that there is somebody in this body is called a woman, somebody who is in this body is a man,
mm,
and that's the way it is.
mm,
Again, when I say things are shifting, right, we're being able to really see ourselves in different ways, and
mm,
bodies are shifting and changing, being born in different ways. So
mm,
it's really challenging even those thoughts that
mm,
kind of, well, wait a minute, if that's not it, where does intimacy happen? So sometimes we get our foundations rocked a little bit, unstable. It's kind of like, what do you mean? What do you mean?
Mm.
So I would look at it as this part that when we are, it's going to just pause for a moment. I'm just going to just see what wants to come here. When we have I would say from the birth of humanity,
Mhm.
where the experiences and the Big Bang speaks to it. Here we are, and poof, it's
Mm.
go out.
Mm.
And I think it's not an accident. I love words, so I love playing with words. But to see
Mhm.
how when we talk about the Big Bang, as if that's the creation of the world,
Yeah.
we look at it sometimes. A bang is referred to as a sexual act.
Mhm.
And in both cases, there's this thing about we're looking outside of ourselves.
Mm.
And the idea that we are looking outside of ourselves to be whole, to be complete, to be satisfied, to be pleasured, it disconnects us right away from ourselves. And so if I'm always looking for intimacy with somebody else and I'm not allowing for intimacy with myself, then there can be those barriers of communication. There can be somebody sees something one thing and somebody sees it another thing. I remember back, and this was going back 13, 14 years ago,
Mhm.
and I was speaking with a friend, and this was just shortly, in a year or two after my midlife sexual awakening. And I remember one of my friends was saying to me, "It really bothers me when women don't stand in their power." And I said, "Are you talking to me?" And he said, "This has nothing to do with you." And he went on to continue to talk and share. And
Mm.
then I said, because I could feel this irritation within. And I said, "Are you talking about me?" And he very adamantly says, "This has nothing to do with you."
Mm.
And that spoke to me. That was a huge
Mm.
learning thing for me. That ability to just hear what somebody is saying, allow somebody to be where they're at without taking it personally. And oftentimes, and why was it agitating for me? Because there was some part of me that says I wasn't standing in my power, I wasn't coming from this place of power.
Mm.
And so when we have intimate times with somebody else, we are each coming at things from our own lens, our own perspective, our own experiences,
Yeah.
with the assumption that because I'm showing up, well, they'll understand. But it's not always that way. So I would
Mm.
say that that's a big part of where intimacy sometimes doesn't happen, or where some of the blocks are, where there isn't that openness because of miscommunication or that shift of perspective, or places where we're feeling disconnected ourselves.
But that also brings to this thing like two parts. One, we talk about intimacy. As soon as we say that intimacy means it has to be with someone other person.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other side of the coin is like, as you said rightly, that intimacy first, if you don't understand yourself or don't understand your intimacy, then you're not going to be as intimate to others as you would have loved to or liked, or there will be rejections, or there could be rejections, but not necessarily, but you don't realize that. So the two difference between self-intimacy and intimacy as general, which normally understands people, that has to be with someone or has to be with some other person. How do you then say which one is really not important or non-important, but which one really triggers our emotional well-being? Because intimacy, as you said rightly, starts from us. We have to start from us. Then only we are controlling our emotions. Because is intimacy a part of, like as you said, it's an emotion, but is it a part of the emotions that really trigger to yourself and others? Because it's not something that it's only for you. When the emotions are there, you are spreading that emotion. So same thing, if intimacy is there, you are spreading that intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see that, view it? as important from individual to
Hmm.
non-individual or to two people.
Right. Hmm. I see it that each person being as honest as they can
Hmm.
in every moment. And
Right.
sometimes people have a bad day, or they're feeling emotional about something else, and they bring that into relationship type things. So I would say that in many ways it's that aspect of each person being as honest as they can with themselves, and that ability then spills out or flows out in that ability to be honest with somebody else. And again, when I say it comes back to the sense of trust,
Hmm.
is can I be aware of myself, and can I feel into that place of trust to be vulnerable with somebody else? And I think that's a big part of the vulnerability, is a big part of what intimacy speaks to,
Hmm.
is being vulnerable to be seen, and here I am. And a lot of times, as I said earlier, it's easier to be physically naked than it is to be emotionally naked.
Hmm.
And and so that's
Right.
and all of us bring our experiences to the relationship.
Hmm.
And a lot of people, when we're busy looking at the other person for intimacy, or allowing that person to be a part of this unfolding intimacy that happens, is that, and I just seems like just kind of lost my train of thought there.
Hmm.
Um, hmm. Okay, did a little bit of a pivot here, so let's just see what's here. Hmm. That we don't always see or recognize that oftentimes the person that's in our world is mirroring back to us something, or when we feel agitated, that it's resonating. There's that vibration that's happening within us
Hmm.
that's either agitating it, or that something's ready to release and to be awakened. So that's what I see one of the gifts of intimacy in terms of
Hmm.
any people, whether it's sexual intimacy, whether it's just emotional intimacy, however it is, this to really be in this beautiful place as much as possible each time,
Hmm.
of openness and a curiosity
Hmm.
to what's here, what's possible, what
Hmm.
is it that's showing, and being in a place of exploration rather than habits, right? We've got our habits, and this is how it does, and trying to figure those out. So, and a
Yeah.
playfulness. I think that intimacy is really fueled by curiosity, exploration, playfulness. Just a real, yeah, that
So,
seems to
so
be a wonderful fuel for it.
right, right. So how do we then, let's dive into this, like how does intimacy related to the sexuality, whether it's a male or female? And then how does it related to the spirit that we are? Now, we don't often talk about spirit, male spirit or female spirit, right? We only
Mm,
talk about spirit. A spirit is a spirit, whether it's a male or whether it's a female. It's a spirit.
mhm,
We
mhm.
don't divide that into gender.
Right.
However, when it comes to sexuality, we divide it into two different things. One is female sexuality, one is male sexuality.
Mm,
So when it comes to intimacy, that also is like a spirit. Intimacy is one word, can be for male, can be for female. It doesn't have a male female intimacy. However, in your world or in your view, how do you view differently the intimacy when it comes to male and female, and when it comes to sexuality of male and female, and when it comes to spirit? And it's a big,
mm.
long question. However, there are three parts. It's a three parts to it. Basically, let's go one by one. Like, okay, male.
Sure.
Let's go one. Intimacy doesn't have a gender. It's an intimacy, but it is still viewed that, oh no,
Sure.
he's a male, so it's okay if he's intimate
Mm,
like that. Hey, she's female, it's okay if she's intimate like that. There are different parts and different things of intimacy when it
mhm.
comes to male and female, of expression or
Sure.
emotions that come out of male and female. When it comes to intimacy, it's different. Same thing when it's sexuality, it comes different when it's male and female, but
Mhm.
still the achievement or the goals are the similar kind of thing. Ultimately, What we are doing is the male is trying to express just the way it is, he is, and the female just the way. But as we all know, the spirit has got all both sides, the male, the feminine, and the masculine. So the everyone has got both, even the female, even the male. So this is a very challenging kind of a mind-boggling question for me as well to understand. I'm
Mm,
sure whatever
mm,
we can explore, how do we see this as when it comes to understanding and importance of intimacy for male and female, intimacy, and then sexuality for male and female, and then the spirit that we are, and how it is connected. The topic is the how is the intersection of sex and spirit, basically,
mm, mhm,
with the
mhm.
intimacy.
What a beautiful, beautiful topic and things that we get to talk about. I'm really
Hmm.
grateful for this. There are, different body shapes, different hormonal pieces that function within each of those kinds that cause different types of sensations and emotions.
Right.
And I think that that's something that is, generally agreed upon. And even sometimes within a certain body type, there are different fluctuations
Hmm.
within. So even there, it's not, cut and dried,
Hmm.
a bit of a range that way. If we were to look at, just getting a pause here again. So I'm just going to, we come from a very culturally, I will say, very culturally, this sense of a duality. There's this and there's that. There's light and there's dark. There's right and there's wrong. There's good and there's bad. There's woman and there's man. And we're very much in that model. Well, there's light and there's dark, but there's also shades of it.
Hmm.
There's, so to be
Yeah.
able to look at various things. But when we operate from that duality, then there's this sense that anything other than that is wrong, right? It's kind of what's wrong rather
Hmm.
than, oh, there's a
Hmm.
spectrum.
Hmm.
So if we look at intimacy that is often viewed as a woman body and a man body, well, there are certain parts that fit together, right?
Hmm.
And that's how it's supposed to be. And yet intimacy can be so much more. It can be as simple as sitting close to one another. It can be as simple as
Hmm.
messaging one another. It's not always about just the physicality.
That's right. Mhm.
In our culture as well, we are often taught that men as sexual beings, because they have certain hormones, that there is this way of being that is different.
Mhm.
And it's often thought that men have a much higher sex drive than women, when in reality it's actually perhaps even the opposite.
Mhm.
But because we come from a culture where men's sexuality is, or male bodied sexuality is, you know held as, men will be men, but women, no, hold your sexuality, down. It belongs in the home. Don't be showing yourself, which is an interesting thing. But sex is everywhere. Sex sells, right? Sex is used to sell all kinds of things. Advertisements. Use that allure of sexuality, and so we're very much held in there. But if we were to really look at sexual appetites and even further and deeper down into the erotic energy of things, it's very alive and well in all.
Mhm.
And women, for when we think about, say, orgasm, that men typically can have, when they ejaculate, it's like, okay, they're done.
Mhm.
And I laughingly say is that we often put ejaculation and orgasm at the same time. They happen often at the same time. So we think that ejaculation is an orgasm, and it's not. They're two things that happen at the same, that are two different things, but they often happen at the same time. We think they're the same. uh, but when we look at it from that type of a physical expression, a release,
Mhm.
that women actually are capable of multiple, 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 multiple orgasms.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was married and at an early age, I didn't know about my body. And my husband and I, we just kind of assumed, that, this male trajectory that build, 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 release,
Mm.
that was the way it was for everybody. And so for me, it was build, 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 build,
Mm.
okay, I guess I lost it, okay, let's try it again another time. And not realizing until, years later after my midlife sexual awakening, um, that there's the trajectory of build, upregulate, and downregulate, which is build excitement and tension and then relax. And
Mm.
it's not that you've lost it, it's just relaxing into things. And when you relax, you can feel more. And the next time it goes even higher. So when I'm working with people, I teach them to use your breath, use sound, use movement to allow that upregulation, the downregulation, upregulation, downregulation. How many waves can you go?
Mm.
And when it feels like, something's ready to burst, it's just kind of, okay, use your breath. Can you allow, instead of meeting that cap of pleasure, can you allow your breath to expand and feel that energy in your whole body?
Mm.
And to be able to allow that, and that's applied for women and men, that's applicable for every type of body, is build and relax, build and relax, ride the waves. And then it becomes, the energy can disperse and spread in the whole body. So instead of something being restricted to genitals, it's now a part of the whole body and beyond. um, so it's when we talk about intimacy, if we can allow for, and that's when I talk about habits, it's
Mm.
that part. But it's also this idea that men have a sexual organ that can penetrate, women bodies can be penetrated. And yet there's openings in everybody's body that can be penetrated. And there are different implements that can penetrate. So what I find is that this sort of feels it's a twist here, in the sense that oftentimes when we have been taught for men to, toughen up, be a man,
Mm.
don't cry, don't be a sissy, that is a very much a reflection of that shut down, deny the
Mm.
feminine part of themselves,
Mm.
deny that feminine part of what can be penetrated, or what can be that feminine part of them to be nurturing to um, the creative part of things. So there's different ways where we can really bring the masculine and feminine together in each other. And that's what intimacy can do, is to allow each of us, not just in the body part that we are, but to allow this merging of masculine and feminine in physical bodies, but masculine and feminine bodies within each body.
Mm. Correct. So
And
do you
where does
think, just cutting you here, but just do
yeah.
you think then the suppression that woman has been asked to do, that when it comes to sexuality, like, oh, no, 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 you can't express sexuality for women is too restricted. For men, oh, it's okay if you express your sexuality.
Mhm.
Is it because the nature and the system and the universal law is like, okay, we know that if women start expressing more, then we will have more population in a way.
Mm,
But
mm,
but either way, if you look at it, whether men expresses or woman expresses, it is going to, they both need to have that.
mm,
They need to have to get the evolution. But woman has always been like told not to express your sexuality, or not to open up, not be restrictive, so that you should not be more attractive or giving attraction to the male. So that's how it is looked at.
mhm,
Is it because then, okay, they have a problem that, okay, if she starts expressing, then there is no kind of difference of intimacy between male and female,
mm,
because as you know, they are two different intimacy aspects. So as you rightly said, that some female has got a different kind of league of expression and to understand their own
mhm,
body, whereas
mhm,
male also to understand their own body, But then to make your body understand to the other body is a big challenge in between.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that is where we are coming to a situation where, okay, what is intimacy? How, why it is so important when it comes to sexuality? But as a spirit, for evolvement also, why it is important to understand these aspects of men and women,
Mhm.
rather than just going by the book or going by saying that, oh, I have this urge, I have this desire, so I'm going to do it either way.
Mhm.
Not
Mhm.
looking at the other side of the coin, which is what you want to do with what is that person, he or she has got sets in her mind or in his mind, right?
Mhm.
So in that aspect, how do you relate this to the intersection of the sexuality and the spirit that we are, basically?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a
What
really great
should be?
question.
Yeah.
Mhm. That I see that as number one, we come from spirit, the little
Mm.
child that's just fresh, fresh from the
Yeah.
spirit world,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, and is very much in tune with their body. If they're hungry, they, make little sounds. If they need to move, they squirm. If they're, you know, wanting to get a toy, they start to do it. And that inclination to go with that impulse to explore, to live, to pursue, to learn, to touch, to take in is
Mm.
just that the yes of life. And that becomes a very much is just a natural thing. And soon we, little by little, we start to take what they're feeling inside and the impulse to move and to be, we start now to give words to, we start to label what they're doing. So first of all is, they're taking in through all of their senses,
Mm.
here's mom and dad, and here's, the dog, and oh, here's a cup, and oh, you're gonna have something to eat, and all of those different things, the labels. And so, and it starts to become, and that's a great way to be able to start to interact.
Mm.
What also happens is when we start to feel different things within,
Right.
that we label those as well.
Mm.
And in the labeling of them, we actually come to this place of starting to disconnect from our bodies, because now I'm feeling lonely.
Mm.
Actually, we're not feeling lonely. We're feeling something in the body.
Mm.
We give it a meaning and we
Mm.
call it lonely.
Right. Right.
So to be able to do that, and that's where I see, and where I work with people and where I start with them is
Mm-hmm.
from a place of consent, not just about the yes and no, but that feeling within the body from
Mm.
which consent
Mm.
is given or expressed.
Mm.
And so where it comes to this intersection of sex and spirit,
Mm.
as people know themselves, if we were to just keep coming from ourselves, it would be this um, there would be this honesty, there would be this um,
Mm.
each person living in their truth. But as we in the human experience have different places where things get shut down, things get overridden,
Right.
um, get denied, or somehow judged, shamed, then all of a sudden we start to disconnect from what's there. So I see this aspect of the spirit. It's this journey of our human journey being this part of covering the truth of who we are. And the sex act itself, if we talk about that specifically, or even just intimacy, sex, solo sex, that it's this way to come back into this wordless way of being and feeling and experiencing ourselves.
Mm.
Even when we talk about an orgasm, la petite mort, it's that little death. In that moment, there's nothing else exists. There's not, the grocery list isn't there. There isn't this somebody that's supposed to be telling me what I should be. There's just this connection with it all in those little moments. And so we come from spirit through sex, and sex can be that portal back into that remembrance of that direct experience of our wholeness as well. And sometimes that intimacy with ourselves, allowing for what we're feeling, that intimacy that can happen with another person can play that role in the idea of two shall become one, can be this experience of actually there was never two in the first place. We were always one.
This
So
one,
it
yeah.
allows for that place to take us back into that remembrance of who we are, that way of remembering that this human body is a vessel. It's not who we are. It's this vessel for spirit.
Right, 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 right. So, yeah, that's amazing. There's it's so many things to talk about it, to understand. It's not about just talking, but actually understanding, because sexuality, intimacy, and the spirits, it's not just like labels, but we need to understand what they and how they affect to
Mm-hmm.
us, all of us. And as you rightly said, spirit is one, so we are also first one, but we think, okay, we are two, and we think that we have to do with another, but self or solo or by on its own, people live without anyone. So there are so many people who live single
Mm-hmm.
with no attachments, no sex, no sexuality, nothing. But
Yeah.
they survive, they live basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the most important part. I personally feel that, how do we survive even though we don't have sex? How do we survive? Why do we survive?
Mm-hmm.
Some
Mm-hmm.
of the things that mind-boggling came out of this is I want to ask your opinion or your views. Spirit is there, but then spirit is also there with whether it's flesh, blood, no, nothing doesn't matter, or male, female doesn't matter. But spirit is a spirit. Even though we don't know what it is, we still know that there is some existence of this soul that we call ourselves, right? How do you see this aspect of in the current world of living? People feel that, oh, I am alone, I can't do this, I can't do that. And then emotional well-being kicks in a lot, big time. But then there are people who make what they call it themselves, they justify themselves. And then they say, okay, no, I am a spirit, first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
So sexuality, intimacy is there within me, but then I live with all these three things. So how do you see and what will be your message to all the listeners who are listening currently, saying that, okay, what is it actually we are talking about is intimacy, but what is it? Like, there is, there are people with no intimacy that we think, but they still carry some intimacy, because as everybody has got the capability and capacity of evolvement, of having sex and sexuality,
Mm-hmm.
but then also they have the capacity to, you know, whether to satisfy themselves or others. It's not about pleasure and just that, but it's an evolvement of humans that we all have been asked what to do by default. Okay. What would you say to all the people who are listening? Like, okay, how do you live your life when it comes to intimacy, sexuality, and the spirit that we are all embedded with?
Mm-hmm.
Give us your view on that. Living a journey, as you said.
Yeah.
Mm.
My invitation would actually be to be your own best lover.
Oh, okay. Mm.
Yeah. And as people learn about themselves, then they can share that with another partner. If there's this sense of not wanting to be there,
Mm.
then there's that part that is still shut off. Even when you try to be intimate with somebody else, there's that part that's there. So until we can really fully, truly come home and be our own best lover, be there. Can I give myself the touch, whether it's, stroking my hair? Can I give myself the touch? Can I give myself the attention? Can I
Mm.
give myself the love? Can I give myself the honoring? Can I give myself the celebration for who I am that I would want from somebody else?
Mm.
And
Right.
so it comes back to, come on, come back home, come
Mm.
back home.
Mm. Right, right, right. So it's quite powerful to understand our own needs, our own, aspirations, desires, benefits, dreams, whatever we call all these labels, but we all aspire this to do this. And when it comes to the same thing with the sexuality or becoming a spiritual or spirit recognizing our spirit or becoming spiritual, we still have to go deep dive into every single aspects of it, right?
Yeah, that's true. 14, 15 years ago, there was a quote
Mm,
that I heard, and it's been one of my threads, and I've stayed with it. It's just such a powerful quote by Audre
mhm,
Lorde. And she says, we tend to think of the erotic, and the erotic was a word for me that felt very dirty, if you will. It felt
mhm,
very much an objectification of women, for dirty men who would, it was erotic. It just felt really, until I heard this quote. We tend to think of the erotic as a quick, tantalizing sexual arousal. I speak of the erotic as that deepest life force energy that moves us in a fundamental way.
mhm. Wow.
Yeah. And that's when I say, come on home, be
Mm,
your own best lover, give yourself the touch you wish somebody else would be. Go and enjoy that dinner by yourself. Can you be your own best company? Can
mm.
you give yourself the gift of your presence?
Yeah.
And that's where you're tapping into that life force energy that's beyond some quick, tantalizing sexual arousal, but you're tapping into that spirit of who you are that is using and living and feeling and being in and through this body.
Absolutely, very well said. And that's where we started, like what is intimacy and why people get rejected with the word itself. Similarly, what you said, erotic. So people get really emotional about erotic. Oh, that's not a good word. I don't want to speak from my mouth. You can speak. I won't speak. All these things are there with the words, how much powerful these words are, like this intimacy. But they are mean something, as you rightly said.
Yeah,
They don't
yeah,
mean what you understand. They mean
right.
on a very deeper level. It's totally
Hmm.
high level.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah,
that's a great message, Lorna, that we
cool.
all understood.
Yeah, true. I'd love to leave. There's a visual that I'd like to create just as
Hmm.
a visual that really can beautifully stand for intimacy on a human level, relationship level, spiritual level.
Yeah.
A dear friend of mine, at one point in his career, he was taught to cut diamonds.
Hmm.
And he said that a diamond that is well cut, we think of diamonds and they're all,
Yeah.
glittery and flashy and stuff. He said a diamond that is well cut, that when you look at any one of those facets, you actually see into the center of the diamond.
Mm.
So that's what I invite us to allow for, that no matter what interactions we have with ourselves or with other people, that it's allowing us to see into us,
Yeah, in us, within us. Yeah, you're
into
right.
me see, into me see.
That's why you said, yeah, into me see. So that's it. Beautiful analogy, Lona. I love this beautiful conversation about this because this is not quite often we get. And the words itself is quite so sometimes could be daunting, something could be very much intimidating. And we feel that, oh no, I can't say this, I can't say that. But reality-wise, intimacy is no different to any other word or any other emotions that we can express. And I think expression is one of the best part of who we are as a human. Because if we don't express, we don't evolve. It's simple as that. What do you think?
I think that expression is that
Hmm.
natural lust for life, that life force energy that like a fountain just flows to be able to express. I think it's just a natural piece. Yeah.
Hmm. And I guess the last note I wanted to just touch on this for the
Sure.
viewers and listeners, like, what do you think, like, when we talk about, it is so important to talk about sexuality, intimacy, because it is actually creating another human. And when you create another human, it's such one of the most beautiful creation of a human being through
Mm,
that sexual act or through that intimacy, you know, we do create that. But we don't value that because we think that whatever we created from is not good or is not great.
mm,
But what is created, we value that. The
mm,
process of creation, we don't value. Does
yeah.
that, does that like You
Hmm.
feel the same thing, like what people
Yeah.
needs to understand or grow up into their mindset, then the world will
Hmm.
be totally different. We won't have any violent or abuse or sexual abuse and all of that. That's happening because we feel that's dirty or that's not
Right.
good.
That's right. And as I say that, how do you know when something is really powerful? When it is made to be bad, when it is shamed, when it is, stay away from it, it's dangerous.
Mm,
How do we know there's a lot of power? Just like, the vault at a bank, it has guards, it has lasers, it has alarms, it
mm,
has all kinds of locks on it
yeah.
because there's great value in there. And so it's the same way that oh, don't that, oh, no, don't be that, keep it here. Oh, no, because we know there's just that deep power, both physically as well as spiritually, that if we really
Mm,
knew who we are through the sexual piece, through that erotic life force energy,
mm,
so we're in this incredible experience of,
mm,
um, as I say, the story of the game of the experience of hiding the truth of who we are.
mm.
And now, as we are now in this place of realizing and uncovering what's been there all along.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much, Lona. This is beautiful conversation. Once again, to all the listeners, as you can see, you don't have to be ashamed or guilt or stupid when you think about intimacy, when you think about spirit, when you think about sexuality. We all have different opinions, different interpretation of these words. However, they mean a lot in our life journey as a human. And I think that's what we all need to just value these words, and then things will differ with a different mindset. Because what we have seen so far in the world, in the system, is a mindset of what we are discussing today. But if we want to see the change in good value, that we can, value the words, then things can change for the better.
Mm-hmm.
That's all
Mm-hmm.
I would say. What's your final word, Lona?
Mm-hmm. I will say, I love what you've said there, Shailesh, and I invite our listeners to come for our next conversation because we're going to be addressing that very thing of
Hmm.
a shift. So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Until then, we will make you excited for our next topic, which is the most controversial could be, but it's the most beautiful, amazing topic because I love intimacy because we all have, we just don't express. So when you don't express, you suppress. And when you suppress, that's where you don't like intimacy. So, with that note, thank you very much, Lona, once again for this beautiful conversation. And we will come back next time with more deeper into the diving more deeper into this topic that could really uncover a lot of things that we unknown so far, but we can create something